Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Pizza Motorcast. This is your host, Dave. I got online special guest, Dennis Holas. How you doing, Dennis?
How you doing, Dave? Thanks for having me on.
No problem, Dennis. So, how did you begin your drag racing career, Dennis?
Well, I tell you what, it was kind of funny. I actually had no desire to drag race because I watched my brother go through a lot of problems, blowing up engines, and always working on his car, and I just thought, wow, that's not fun. And a friend of mine owned a gas station, and he bought a '66 Chevelle, and he was looking for somebody to drive it. And I was a kid. I was 17 years old. We were just BSing one day, and he says, he goes, we're going to take it to the track. He goes, why don't you come on out? He had a couple guys that were going to drive it, and he says, let's see who can drive it, and, we'll go from there. I ended up kind of getting the job.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it was kind of cool, it was nice because I thought, wow, this is nice. I'm not funding it out of my dime, and I'm going racing with somebody else, so it was kind of fun, it was a nice introduction into it, and we were actually going to buy into a whole cavalcade of funny car deals, and I got a smell of nitromethane, and that was it. I was done. I had to be around that.
Yeah, that was just like me when I was probably like 4 or 5. My dad started taking the US 30.
So you got to go then. That's cool.
Oh yeah, I got to see a mongoose and snake all the time and all that. Yeah. Those were the good old days, man.
I'm sorry?
I said those were the good old days.
Yeah, they really were. You know what? It was a different time, and when we started racing and going to US 30, it was kind of a home. It had a different feel to it than it does now. There were no electronics. There was nothing. I mean, there were 5 bulbs on the tree, and if you went red, you left too soon. If you got beat, then you knew you slept. There was nothing, to tell you, your reaction times, no 60 foot, no nothing. It was win or lose when an ET slipped.
Yeah, my dad would drag me to US 30, and then we started going to Great Lakes Dragways. Man. Yep, good old Broadway.
That's cool.
Good old Broadway Bob, man.
Oh yeah, I tell you what, Bob was the man.
Yeah, there'll never be another Broadway.
No, I don't think so. Broadway and even Ron Leake, those two guys they were cut from the same cloth, and you just don't get a better promoters, better announcers. You don't find people like that anymore. They really loved what they were doing, and they knew how to make a business out of it, and they knew how to entertain the fans. It was when you went there and you saw the show and you went home, you were pumped up about it. I guess it's kind of like the same feel that people get from wrestling. Watching WWF wrestling. It was that kind of atmosphere back then.
Yeah, Bob knew how to put on a good show.
Yeah, he always did. He had his Memorial Day weekends and Labor Day weekends were, they were just killer. And they were so much fun to go hang out. We'd go for the whole weekend and camp out and watch. And, it was just a lot of fun. I mean, there was a lot of cool drag racing going on back in the day.
Now, do you have any drag racers that were heroes to you back in the day?
A lot of the guys that, oh yeah, there was just nothing cooler than that, seeing, especially when it started, we had a lot of local stuff here, at Oswego and US 30, you had what they called Super Stock Eliminator back then, and you had these 68, 69 Camaros, big block color Ram 4-speed cars, doing battle, and everybody was, they were just cracking into the 9-second zone back then, and God, we thought them cars were just ballistic fast. When you look at it now, cars were slow, but back then they were flying.
Yeah, so it's looking like they're trying to get a big field of Nostalgia Pro Stocks in for Memorial Day weekend next year.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's really cool that, they're doing that and kind of bringing back the cars that everybody can identify with. I think, it really ain't my place, but, when I look at what happened with Pro Stock NHRA Pro Stock now, I don't know, it just lost something, and I like the fact that, these 80s and very early 90s, pro stocks are coming back, like with the nostalgia stuff, it's kind of the cars that everybody identified with. They look like real cars. It's kind of like the nostalgia funny cars the same way. They look like what they were supposed to look like.
Yeah, it's nice to see two different pro stock groups working together now with Bob Marley with Outlaw Pro Stocks and then Dan Manis's group that runs at the Grove all the time. They're going to be working together, doing their cars together now.
Yeah, there's a lot of groups around, I mean, it really kind of took off. I mean, it started with a few cars, and, now you got not just the 16 that would qualify. You'd see guys from all over the country that are, trying to qualify, and, it was really neat. It was kind of a gathering. I was actually listening to one of your early podcasts, and that Don Finley, he was talking about, like the Coca-Cola Cavalcade of funny cars and the 32 car shows and the 64 car shows, it's stuff that, we got to see. I mean, I try to explain that to somebody, that, yeah, on a Sunday afternoon, that was, 64 cars at Rockford Dragway, and they're like, no way. I'm like, oh, yeah, it was all in one day, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, like same thing with the funny cars. Seeing all those funny cars lined up in the staging lanes back in when we used to go to US 30 in Great Lakes.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? It was a different time of drag racing, and I luckily got to be friends with Pat Minnick. I didn't get to see him a lot, but when I did, I talked to him, and he said something to me that I thought was really cool. He says, we lived through the heyday of drag racing and didn't even realize it. And it was so true when you look back on it, and Pat realized what they did back in, in the 70s and the 60s and, saw what happened then. So, when, everything changed and it became real corporate and stuff like that, he remembered when they were actually out having fun, and making a living doing it.
Yeah, you remember the long smoky burnouts back then from the funny cars?
Oh, yeah. God. Yeah, that was, that was the thing. I mean, that's what got people on their feet. You see somebody go on and do a 300-400 foot burnout, and then back up and lay down a pass. It was, I mean, there was nothing cooler. You'd smell that rubber and nitro in your nostrils for the next week after a race.
Yeah, the Chi-Town Hustler was known for those long smoky burnouts.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Now you got Mike Minnick out there in the Chi-Town Hustler.
Yeah, my good friend Larry Coughlin, he owns that car, and Mike drives it. I'm really proud of Larry of what he did with that car and what they've done this year with it. And they really, for a brand new program, they really came around fast with that deal. And, that they ran really hard and good at Martin, Michigan. And that's awesome. Look for big things out of that car next year.
Yeah, that funny car chaos, that's an awesome event that Chris Graves is doing.
It really is. I get kind of screwed up with the hours that I work and what I do because, I work Friday night, so I don't get off of work till Saturday morning. So it's really hard for me to go out and, go to a race, especially something that's not local. And I've been wanting to go with Larry and Mike and them guys just to hang out and watch the car. But, I just haven't had time. And that deal at Martin, I've missed it almost every year.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty cool if they could get funny car kids in the Great Lakes Dragway. I think they'd get a good crowd over there, man.
I think so too. I think it would be a really, really neat deal. I mean, that it's something that needs to be brought more local to here. I think what is it, Martin, Michigan, and the Central Dragway?
Yeah,
are the two closest.
Yeah, because I think the fans at Great Lakes Dragway are probably hungry to see a big field of funny cars over there.
Right. Well, I know that a few years ago that when Scott Garner still had Cordova, I think it was Dragzine was doing that funny car program, the Nostalgia Funny Car program, and they had it at the World Series a few years. And luckily we were there, with the Midwest Superstock really funny cars. I really thought I was that 7-year-old kid standing at, a US 30 against the guardrail, at the bleachers
Yeah.
watching funny cars again. It was really neat.
Yeah. So now this year, have you gotten to race it all this year at all?
You know what? I've been in the process of finishing my wife's car. My wife's always been by my side in everything I've done, and she was a big part of with the mafia and all that stuff, and she's had a '69 Fairlane that I've been working on, and I've put it through a couple different paces, and I redid a bunch of stuff on her. I said, "Fuck that." But it's something fun. It's something different that we're doing, and it's always been kind of a family affair. So I figured it was time for her to have a little fun behind the wheel.
So next year, are you guys both gonna be out there racing?
I'm definitely gonna take out my car a few times next year. I've got it right now for sale, but I don't. Nobody's beating down my door to buy it, so I've got a couple changes I want to make, and I want to take the car out and run it. We're definitely going to run her car. Probably do some of the no prep anarchy races at Union Grove, and then we want to do that True Street deal with NMCA next year. We planned on doing it this year, but with her getting hurt, I just taking care of her and trying to work and everything like that. We just didn't have the funds or the time to get the car done in time, and so now everything's kind of coming together. So hopefully over the winter I can finish the last of what I need to do, and hopefully we'll be all ready to go when it comes springtime.
So now, Dennis, let me ask you, how was it for you the first time ever going down a drag race track when you first started racing?
I tell you what, I explained this to somebody that was going to the drag strip for the first time, and I was trying to tell them, everything they need to kind of do, and they weren't in a real fast car, but they were just, it was their very first time. I said, but the biggest thing that I noticed when I did that was when I went to stage at the starting line, and it's funny when I say this, but that Christmas tree to me seemed like it was about 100 feet tall. It just seemed like this giant monster in the middle of the drag strip, You stand there and you watch it, you look at it when you're spectating, but when you're in the car, you get this whole different view to it. And when I rolled up, my first time to stage, and I wasn't even driving a real fast car the first time I made a run, but this Christmas tree really, honestly, seemed like it was about 100 feet tall. And it was so intimidating. And it took me a little while to shrink it to size and be able to react to it, because it was so intimidating.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of neat. I mean, the rest of it was, you're going down the track and, you're hoping you're doing everything right that you're supposed to do. But I think that Christmas tree was the biggest thing, maybe because it was so big at the time and it had 5 lights on it, plus a green that, maybe it was 100 feet tall. I don't know.
Yeah. So what's the quickest pass you've made with that car?
My car, I've been 833 at 163 so far with it. And we learned a few things, and we found that we're driving through the torque converter on it. So I'm in the process of pulling the transmission back out. The torque converter is going to get sent back, and we're going to, my personal thing is I want to go in the 7s with it.
So what do you got under the hood of that car?
It's got a 565 built by Wesco Racing out of Jenison, Michigan. And, I always call it my junkyard motor. It's been really nice. I mean, it's been a really easy thing. I was kind of scared of the E85 a few years ago when I first made the change because I knew nothing of it. But it's actually been real good. And it's been pretty easy to tune and make some power with. So, we made good power with it on gasoline. Then we switched over. We knocked some boost out of it. And the car actually picked up, and now we're kind of getting back after the boost and doing, making some more power with it. So what I'm going to do with the car, I don't know. I want to go fast with it first and then kind of decide. I mean, it's a heavy car, so, it's not super competitive in a lot of places.
Have you ever thought about running with the E85 guys?
Rich Black has been trying to get me to run with him for the last few years, and he's really been adamant about getting me to run. I just am trying to kind of do my own thing right now with the car and just have some fun, kind of put the fun back in it for me. And then if I can figure out how to slow the car down, nothing against them guys, they run on an 890 index. And if I can get the car to run, within, 890 to 9 flat, and make the car work or, it'd be competitive. Yeah, I'd like to go out and do a little bit of racing with them guys. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
They're great. They're really a great bunch of guys. I mean, Dwayne Waldrop started that deal, and Dwayne and Rich and all the guys over there. I mean, they're really a great bunch of guys.
Yeah, I've interviewed pretty much all of them, but I've never met any of them yet.
Yeah. I mean, they're really cool guys. You know what? I mean, Dwayne ran with the Outlaw Super Stocks for years, and it kind of, me and him talked. He was starting that when I was starting the Mafia, and we sat down and talked, and he just got tired of burning up parts, trying to go super fast. And he says, he says, I want to retire at some point. He goes, I don't want to be putting all my paychecks in the motors, so they kind of created that deal, and it's worked out real well. I mean, they got a big field of cars.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool groups that run at the Grove. You got those guys, you got the Classic American Muscle Association, you got the Brew City Gassers, and you got the Chicago Wise guys.
Right. Yeah, Grove's always had a good bunch of cars up there. We actually went out a couple weeks ago for a test and tune, and my buddy Eric Flitz put a deal together. It was just a fun deal, like ice creamers. Any car that you drive to go get ice cream with. And there was some pretty fast cars that showed up. The problem was that there was a whole bunch of other guys that showed up. There was a Buick Club. There was some kind of German car club that showed up, and it's been years since I've seen 300 cars at Union Grove, but I mean, the staging lanes were absolutely packed. I mean, it felt like I was back in the 70s there, it was kind of cool, actually. I mean, except for the waiting, but, to see that many cars there, it was like, wow.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, especially for an October day, I mean, it just didn't seem like a day that you were going to get a lot of people to come out and go racing, but seemed like I guess everybody had the same thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of drivers in interviews lately saying how I've been watching a lot of live views over the summer, different tracks. You see a lot of empty seats these days. Something's got to be done that we can draw more fans into the tracks again, man.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, bracket racing, it seemed like once US 30 had closed, US 30 used to fill the stands no matter what. I mean, there were just a lot of people that would go out there on Sundays and on Friday nights, just to watch the racing. And it seemed like after that, the fan base of bracket racing kind of went away. I think a lot of people didn't understand it. The people that are actually there together, just to have some fun. And that place was jam-packed with people. And it seems like that's kind of the thing now. It seems like the snow prep racing, small tire stuff, that's kind of what the fan base is going around. It's your younger crowd that's going to go out and watch this all the time. And, I mean, it's, when you look at it, I mean, it was the younger crowd that was following the early stuff. And, we got older, and then the next generation kind of started following what they were following. And now it's kind of this, no prep, small tire radio racing, the stuff like that's going on down in Georgia right now. I mean, it's huge type racing.
Yeah, it looks kind of crazy, though, with all those people on the starting line. It looks kind of dangerous.
Well, yeah, I would admit that. We did an event at 41 a bunch of years ago, and there were so many people on the starting line. When I rolled into the burnout box, when I came out, I was really fearful of hitting somebody. As a driver, I don't know how everybody else's mind thinks, but mine is like, if something goes wrong, I feel responsible for somebody that's standing there, even though that's their decision to be standing there. If the car got sideways and I hit somebody, if a part came off the car and it hit somebody, I feel like it's my fault.
Right.
I mean, I'm behind the wheel of the car. And the worst part about it was when I backed up, my buddy Kevin always lines me up, and I was backing up. I couldn't find him. I mean, there were so many people in the crowd I couldn't see them.
Yeah.
And it just seems insane. I guess that's kind of the street racing mentality. And I've been around a lot of street racing, and I've seen that style and the way everybody is. But I just don't understand why a lot of the drag strips, and I let it be known that I think that way, and there's a lot of other people that think that way. It's just something that I just don't think it's safe, and someday somebody's going to get hurt real bad, and then, they're going to look at it and go, oh, where I think the reason that, NHRA and IHRA and AHRA and everybody else, from the beginning of time has always kept everybody away from the cars on the starting line is because there are things that can happen that, you can't foresee.
Exactly.
And, like these people lined up on the wall at Anarchy, I understand it's a younger crowd and they're getting into what they're doing, but they don't realize how dangerous this sport can be. And, I guess being older and being around it and seeing all the craziness that's happened over the years, I've seen clutches come out of cars. I've seen balancers. I've seen rods come out of cars. I mean, I've seen everything that can happen at a drag strip. And, always thought, man, thank God there was nobody standing there, and now there is people standing there.
Yeah.
So I don't, you can't tell everybody what to do, but I just don't think it's really cool. And, I think get back in the grandstands. There's a reason there's grandstands there.
Yep.
Get back in them and sit down, and then watch the show. I don't think you have to be, on top of each other like that. Half the people, if you really watch it, they're looking at their phones and not doing any, they're not watching what's going on anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, all you need to have out there is the crews for each of the cars racing.
Well, that's who should be up there. I mean, that was all the point of it, know, and, there didn't need to be 15 people with a car up on the starting line, but, it's nice to have a couple guys up there, a guy behind the car, a guy lining the car up, somebody checking the wheelie bars, whatever is going on, you have a few people and they can clearly think about what they're doing, and, you're watching Anarchy and, a couple friends of mine were racing and I know one of my buddies was up there and his girlfriend was getting hassled by one. Have to address it, and I think people just have to learn that there's a place that you need to be, and being on the starting line is not one of them.
Yep. So now, Dennis, you have any pre-race rituals or superstitions when you're on the track? That preparation goes into getting that car ready for a weekend of racing.
You know what? It's kind of a thing. Just go over everything. No stone gets unturned. As they say. I just, I run the valves. I check everything. Check fuel. It's one of those. I would really have to sit down and think about what I actually do because I'm so used to doing it. I just go over everything, make sure everything's where it's supposed to be, nothing's ready to fall off the car. It's usually like, luckily we don't race the car.
We lost him. Hold on, let me call him back. Hello.
Hey, Dave.
Yep,
I hope I didn't screw you up.
No, we're okay. I said we lost him. Let me get him back on. So now what were we talking about now? Oh yeah, the ritual.
Yeah, it's just a ritual. I apologize to everybody, when I'm driving and I just run into bad sections over here every once in a while and I'll lose connection. But anyway, no, I think, I just go over the car. We don't run the car week to week, so it's kind of nice. When we were racing quite a bit, we still had a couple weeks in between. And I would just go over everything from the front bumper to the back bumper. Just make sure every nut and bolt is tight. Everything is where it's supposed to be. If I made a change, I look at what I changed. If I change shock settings or whatever. And I just, just kind of go over everything and just make sure of what it is, And luckily, I've been pretty lucky, without having any real incidents, as far as, missing something or something like that. And, knock on wood, you can't really be too prepared when you go to the track. I've seen guys leave their cars make sure something didn't move, and
Yeah.
I guess it's just kind of a drag racer thing, you just go over everything and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Yep. Safety first.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you really don't want to get hurt. It's kind of the bottom line. We try to go out and do our thing and make sure that we're not going to wind up on our head.
Now, throughout your drag racing career, have you had any accidents?
I'm sorry?
Throughout your drag racing career, have you had any accidents?
Yeah, actually, I've had two. I had one at Union Grove back in 2010. We had changed the tune-up, and I was learning a lot about the MSD box. And, we were trying to do some real monster wheelies with the car, and the car went out, and the car really just stood up and would not come down. I had shoved the car in third gear where I never did before, and the car was drifting to the left, and I was kind of watching the wall, and I was trying not to, pedal the car because I didn't want to, stuff the oil pan in the ground, so I thought, it'll come down, and it did. So I ended up pedaling the car, and I pedaled it just a little bit too late, and we flipped the wall at Union Grove and kind of got the whole left side of the car pretty good.
And what happened to the other? What happened to the other one?
The other one was a steering malfunction. We actually had done a bunch of work to the car. We had just put the Pro Charger on it, and we rushed. And that was something I really don't like to do, and we got rushed. And, we ended up having to take the steering column out of the car, and then we put it back in, and we didn't get it back into place where it should have been. And the third pass, when I left the starting line, the collar slipped off the gearbox itself. And luckily the car didn't do a monster wheelie. It just kind of carried the front wheels. And when it came down, the wheels were pointed to the right, and it just took off to the right. I got on the brakes, but it just, your first instinct is to whip the wheel back to the left because, you don't think you lost your steering as fast as you're trying to do something. You grab the brakes and it got the wall to the right side. So I always joke around about it because it's about the only way you can deal with something like that, and I'm like, well, you know what? The paint was kind of looking a little shoddy on that side anyway, so, we'll fix that side. So, that's the drag racer's retarded way of looking at things. It's like, well, you know what? We scratched it, time to repaint it. So, but, luckily nothing ever, it's never been anything real serious. I've had the car get loose on me a couple times, and luckily gathered the car back up again. Nothing at real high speed, thank God. So, knock on wood as far as that goes.
Yeah, knock on wood, you'll never have any more accidents.
Yeah, exactly. It's something you definitely don't want to... It's a real bad feeling to hear metal against concrete. It's not a good sound.
So now, what's your favorite tracks to run on?
You know what? Just about every one of them locally. I've been to, 66, which is right in my backyard, which is a phenomenal drag strip. Cordova, I love to death. That place has just got such a US 30 feel to it. And US 30, honestly, was probably the first of my love. I love that drag strip.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to race at Oswego, US 30, Union Grove, Cordova. We've gone out to Cedar Falls, Iowa, Eddyville, Iowa. We've been to Martin, Michigan. We've been to, US 41, another local drag strip to us. And you know what? They're all great drag strips. They really are. We're really kind of blessed to have so many tracks within, let's say, 4 hours of it, 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
A lot of people go, tell me, you guys are really lucky up there. And when you grew up with it and you've had it in our backyard for as long as you have, you don't really realize how lucky we are.
Yep.
Between, Union Grove, 66 and 41, and, and even Byron, they're all within an hour and a half of each other, of, where I've always lived. So, it's kind of always like, well, where are we going to go? It really doesn't matter, as far as quality of drag strip. It's just kind of what the weather's going to dictate.
Yep. So now, Dennis, after all the years of drag racing, what still keeps you passionate about doing it?
I think it's just a love of it. I really do. It's something that, I loved it as a kid, and I always wanted to be part of it. I always thought that was just something that was so cool that I wanted to do. And, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis back in 2012, and I battle that every day. I push myself, but it's definitely slowed me down. I can't do as much as I can. I can't uh, work as hard at what I want to do, especially, at the drag strip itself. It really just wears me out, but it doesn't keep me away. I tried to take a year off last year. I actually never went to the drag strip at all last year, and it was like, I don't know, it was like not eating dinner. It was like just something you're so used to doing, and something that you really enjoy doing that, I just didn't do. And, when I went back this year, it was kind of neat. It was like, you kind of noticed everything again, and you noticed how fun it was being there, and, seeing your, meeting guys that you never met before. And I think that's what.
And we lost him again. Yep. Hey, Dennis.
I tell you what, Dave, don't ever get Sprint as a phone.
All right.
It's absolutely horrible.
So now,
Really
so
about that.
when you take the car to the track, who's your crew? Just you and your wife?
It's my wife is always by my side. My buddy Kevin Amelbrad always comes with me, and my brother Frank. It's always been the four of us have always gone to the drag strip together. I learned from my brother. My brother is 8 years older than I am, so he started racing back in the early '70s and always been around it. And he's always come with me. When I started racing, and my buddy Kevin's always been there with me. And well, I've been with my wife now. Oh God, she's gonna kill me when she hears this. I think it's 33 years total. We'll be married 29 or 34, hon. I forget which one it is. I think she's listening, so sorry. But but you know what? I mean, since day one, she's gone to the drag strip with me, and she's always been there with me. So I think that's probably one thing that's kept me doing what I do. And that was another reason why I finally built her a car, because I thought, I knew how much she liked it. She liked going, and she never asked, for a car. She always thought it'd be neat to have one.
Right.
So I thought it was kind of her time to do it. It's kind of. I think it'll be fun to be on the other side of it now. Where I just, just kind of crew the car and, prep the car and get it ready for her, and watch her go out and have some fun in it.
Now, have you reached any milestones in your racing career?
The milestone to me is that 7-second zone. It's something that I just have not achieved yet. And I think it's just something, I don't know, it was something growing up, once we started kind of going a little bit faster and stuff, it was always like, oh, it'd be neat to go in the sevens. And I know a lot of guys that have done it, it's old hat to them, but, for us, it's just something that we've never achieved yet. We've gotten pretty close. I've been 828 the fastest with that car on nitrous, but, we've been 833, on with the Pro Charger, and we just kind of didn't get to that 7-second zone with the car. So it's just something that, to me, I think when I do it, maybe I'll make another milestone at that point, that I want to achieve, but I think that'll be the one that, kind of does, what I did it.
So getting into the sevens, that's on your bucket list for drag racing?
Yeah, I think so. That's really kind of it. There were a lot of things I wanted to kind of do, and I may still do. I just don't really. I haven't set the goals for it yet. I think because of work and because of the arthritis and stuff like that slowing me down. I always say, I think the final chapter will be putting a tackle car together and just, having a nitro car to fire up and listen to when I'm old and can't do this anymore.
So now, what's been your most embarrassing moment out on the track?
Oh man, you know what? You really wanted me to figure one out? God, I've had enough of them. You know what? God, I think, you know what? There's just so many. You know, it's just you. If when you do it long enough, you know, and I've been doing it since what 1979, 1978. You know, there's just kind of stupid things you do. You know, I've staged the car. You know, and a perfect example of one that was really. I was third or fourth round when I was bracket racing with my Camaro, and I did the burnout, you know, and you know, and something happened in front of us, and I shut the car off, and we were sitting there, and we were within a foot of the starting line, you know, and they had us fire back up, and I fired the car up, and I put the car on the starting line, and you know, I got on the transbrake and I left. Well, I never turned the fuel pump on, and you know, the car left, and it went about a foot and died. You know, and I'm throwing my arms up and I'm looking around, you know, and I'm thinking I broke the motor in the car and everything, and you know, and I'm sitting there for a second, and my buddy that was with me at the time, he runs up and he's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know, the car just shut off," you know, and then there's like all these people around you and all that, and he goes, "You turn the fuel pump on?" And he said it loud enough for everybody to hear, you know, and I reached up and I flipped the switch, and you know, you heard the pump, and I could hear everyone laughing as I was cranking the engine up, and I took off, and I thought, oh my God, you know. And,
Yeah.
so a couple guys made notes for me, you know, to put on the dashboard, and you know, don't forget the fuel pump, and
Oh
so
no.
yeah, that's the thing about drag racing. You know what? You rib each other, you know, and you know, and there's a lot of smack talk back and forth, and this and that. But you know what? At the end of the day, you know, you've made a friendship with a great community of people. I don't think you really see that anywhere else.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's the one great thing about drag racing. And I don't know, I guess that's what's always kind of brought me to it. You know, that you'll never really go to the track and have, you'll never really deal with somebody that's so obnoxious or such a, you know, just a bad person that, you know, you don't ever want to go back. Right. You may run into that person, but there's probably 20 good people that change your mind to how you feel